Lee writes in with the following question. TJ, what is the best way to find stories from your everyday life to incorporate into speeches and presentations? And how do you make them more memorable? How do you make them come alive? Well, Lee, I'm glad you're asking this because stories are the single biggest difference between great speakers and awful ones. Awful ones systematically eliminate all stories. There's no time. Great speakers, I don't care what industry you're in, great speakers use stories to illustrate all their key points. As far as where you find them, they're everywhere. It is what you do. All of us have problems in life. We have to talk to people. We have to resolve problems. That's all a story is really about. For example, when I'm working with a group of people, quite often their initial reluctance is to this concept of video recording themselves and watching it, especially for the homework. So I try to use an example of what actually happened to me. So I remind them, about 15 years ago, I was over in Eastern Europe for the very first time, working with some political figures there. It was a guy who was Prime Minister of Slovenia, and I was working with him. We were in a former dictator's palace, beautiful place, but quite remote. I'm with the Prime Minister, a couple of his staff members, and a whole bunch of guards with big machine guns everywhere. We're in a remote place, gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, big lake vistas everywhere. And he says to me, TJ, do you mind if I give my speech in my native language first? So, by all means, Mr. Prime Minister, go ahead. He stood up, read his speech, head down, blah, 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 blah. I didn't understand it, but he was giving the speech. I recorded it. We played it back. And he turned to me and says, well, TJ, what do you think? And I'm thinking, oh gosh, this is awkward because it was frankly horrible. But I don't know anybody here. I don't know where the embassy is. I'm surrounded by people with machine guns. I don't really want to insult this guy. But finally I said, you know what, he's paying me a bunch of money. Might as well give him my honest opinion. So I said, Mr. Prime Minister, with all due respect, I have no idea what you said, but you bored the heck out of me. He looked at me. He looked at the armed guards. He looked back at the screen. We watched it again, and he turned to me and said, you're right. It is boring as all get out. I wouldn't even want to watch me. And we took his speech, and we tore it up, threw it in little pieces, put it in the trash can. We got a clean sheet of paper, and we started from scratch. And guess what? That's really the response I have from all of my clients when they see themselves on video for the first time. So, Lee, that's not creative writing on my part. I didn't write and rewrite that story. It's an actual real experience for me. And I'm sharing it with my clients because it's driving home the key point that it's important to watch yourself on video, no matter who you are. When you watch yourself, you're typically going to be bored. You're going to find it boring. That's because your speech is boring. So you got to get rid of it and start over again. So that's why that story works. Here's the thing, Lee. It's the message that is most important. The stories are just a way to illustrate the message and to make it come alive, to make it more memorable. You asked about how to make it more powerful, more expressive, more memorable. Just relive it. In that particular story, I painted a picture with words. You could see me in this former dictator's palace. You could see me surrounded by people with guns. I shared my emotional state. I was a little bit nervous. I was a little bit uncomfortable. There was a little bit of the surprise element of how shocked he was and how he wanted to tear up his own speech. So is it a story that's going to win a Nobel Prize for Literature? No. But it's a true story, number one. Number two, it fleshes out the point. Number three, it works because people remember it. So that's my advice to you, Lee, is think first and foremost, what ideas, what messages are you actually trying to communicate to the people you're speaking to? And then step back and ask, what situations have you been in? What conversations have you had with people that were similar that will make this idea come alive? And just talk about where you were and how you felt and what that person said to you and what you said back. That is your story. It's really not any more complicated than that. Thanks for the question, Lee. By the way, if you have questions for me, all you have to do is post them right here on any of the posts on my Facebook page. That's facebook.com/TJ Walker Interactive. If you haven't yet liked this page, please do so. Again, it's facebook.com/TJ Walker Interactive.